Hello and welcome to Velocity Talks. My name is Christopher Durham and I'm the president of the Velocity Institute. This is my weekly opportunity to talk to the cool people in private brand, the people in our industry that are moving and shaking and really putting it out there. So today I'm excited to welcome Maryellen Lynch from Circana. She actually was with us last year under a different company, or different but same company. We'll talk about that in a minute. Maryellen, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I work for Circana. I've done a full tour of duty across kind of the CPG information and research landscape. Have had the pleasure and opportunity to work on some of the methodologies that are in place today, core methodologies. So I've done the full tour from custom research and surveys and focus groups all the way through, sales demand, through behavioral analytics, which is my passion around the consumer, extreme attribution around that data, a little bit of media. So fortunate in that I've been able to have a flavor of it all. So especially at this time when we talk about AI and other things, I can, in my head, conceptually connect how that all works, which is fun.
That's exciting. So Circana, new name, but it's really a company that's been around a long time. Tell us a little bit about who you work for and that story.
Right. So recently, IRI, a name you guys probably all know, recently joined with NPD, National Panel Diary, which is another legacy company. And we came together to form Circana. We're really excited about this because we're completely complementary, the two businesses. It's going to yield the ability to get a perspective on total wallet for the consumer. So consider IRI, legacy company. Actually, we had, sales demand, behavioral analytics, scan panel, receipt panel, and millions of frequent shopper cards data, the POS data. We have media data. We have the ability to do deterministic targets. We have consulting. We have predictive analytics. Forecasting, et cetera. And then NPD on the other side has, they study apparel, food away from home, food consumed and prepared in home, automotive, electronics, games, toys. And so it just really brings a whole robustness to understanding the consumer, and the consumer drives, of course, sales demand. So it's a pretty exciting time. The Circana name seems to be sticking pretty well with people. And there was a tremendous amount of branding and effort in coming up with that name and the whole kind of platform and marketing behind it. So, that's how we came together.
Very exciting. So it gives you access to a lot more stuff, which is
right.
Cool.
It completes the picture. It's gaps in the story can now be kind of filled, or there could be perspective based on bringing the two together.
That's very exciting. I'm always trying to get data on non-grocery drug and mass, pet, home improvement, electronics.
Yep, home improvement. That's
they all own private brands, but nobody talks about them.
Right.
It's very cool. So, as I said, Maryellen's been on before, but I wanted to bring her back on because she'll actually be speaking at our Velocity conference coming up here in a few weeks. If you don't have your tickets, you should get your tickets. They're available right now. Please go and get them at velocityinstitute.org. But Maryellen, tell us a little bit about what you'll be discussing.
So just like you were saying, I'll be speaking about more of the non-food aspects of private brands and maybe making some connection to the food and how who that consumer is and how it relates.
That's very exciting. We're excited to have you come in and be us. So, as we look at this year, I know you guys have a lot of projects going on. Talk to us about some of the things that you'll be fielding this year.
Well, as it relates to private brands, we'll be coming out with our annual report on that later in the year. There might be a few smaller things along the way or interweaved into some of our other research and insights that gets published. But our primary private brands, the big reports, would be near the end of the year.
Right. And so Maryellen will join us at the end of the year in our State of the Industry virtual event. discuss some of that as well. So we're going to have lots of Maryellen in 2023. That's a good thing. Where do you live? Tell me. You've told me before.
I live outside the Chicago area in the
So
suburb.
Chicago. Who do you normally shop?
Well, I make the rounds. So there's a specialty retailer, and then also a limited assortment retailer. So I am a big Aldi and Trader Joe's fan.
Yeah.
But I have a specialty retailer, Pete's, in the area, which has all the array of produce and whatnot. Occasional Sam's or Costco, and then occasional, less often, a Walmart or a Jewel.
That's very much how we shop too. So
yeah,
and I ask because we all engage with private brand in different ways, right? And at different retailers in different ways. So
that's an interesting point too. Is don't lose sight of the fact that private brands in retailer A compete with the private brands in retailer B, C, and D, and that shopper is going everywhere. And they carry in their head like an acceptable set of products, both the private brands, what's acceptable from which retailer, as well as the name brands. And they also carry what the expected price is. So
that's very much how we are. My wife's a big Aldi fan. However,
and she goes there first, right?
She does. She goes there first.
Yeah.
And
so
really, the vast majority of stuff she loves. My kids do not like Aldi private brand cream cheese. They just don't. Is there anything quality wrong with it? No, there's nothing actually wrong with it. They don't like it though. So, there's like a couple of things that she'll be like, well, got to go to Harris Teeter, Publix, wherever, and go get, or because the set's limited, they shop somewhere else. So it's intriguing to hear them discuss private brand in an actual shopping way, and not an analyst or somebody, behind the scenes in the baseball kind of way.
And I think when Aldi moves into a community, many people will give it a try, and they'll go through and they'll be like, I'll try the crackers, I'll try this, I'll try the cheese, and they'll realize it's as good or better in many cases. And then that's how they hook them in.
It's exciting. So I know the numbers on private brand growth have been really good. You guys and PLMA and stuff have been reporting a good bit of that. Talk to me a little bit about those.
Well, sales are up hugely, right?
Yeah.
But when you look at the actual volume demands, they're up. And that's really good. And that's because heading into the pandemic, they really had leveled off in terms of demand growth. And then during the pandemic, of course, there was a lot of chaos. They were up, they were down, and that was all supply related, pantry loading, all of that going on. And now as things are stable, they've gone up in terms of demand. And what's even more interesting is they've gone up in a time when overall sales are weaker, down, because one of the strategies consumers have employed, shoppers, is just basically buying less.
Right.
So in order to manage their resources, they've cut out any excess. They've been conscious about their purchasing. So in that environment, private store brands have increased. They've grown. So overall share has grown.
And its unit share has gone up as well as dollar share, right?
Well, right, the volume. So where demand is the volume, not the dollar, the sales, but the actual demand. So even if you look at the volume, the weights, pounds in categories, many of the key categories, it's gone up.
Yeah, it's interesting. Even where in this economy where we're making trade-offs, because everybody is, right? The premium stuff, we'll shop a Harris Teeter or a Publix and get the premium Publix ice cream, or the Kroger has a great line of chips that have all kinds of fun flavors that are, they're next level up. And my wife comes home and says, try these. And, so I don't know that she's actually spending any less. She's just getting different stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's interesting. And still the majority of private brands are that kind of center, NBE kind of center. And, there's fewer premium private brands relative to that center. When you think about it, it's about half of the sales are coming from only about 14 categories, and they're for private brands, and they're the big ones, the dairy and
it's dry pasta and toilet paper.
And
baking
product, whatever, bread. And so premiumization makes more sense when you get into like the sauces and like the extras. So how big can that be to continue to grow, demand or growth? And are there new areas where private brand really isn't developed yet? New categories, subcategories where it could be?
I mean, I think it's an interesting conversation as you look across the Trader Joe's of the world certainly gets lauded for all of that. And Lord knows they have reinvigorated seasonings and spices in a way that I don't think anybody could have seen coming, with bagel seasoning and elote seasoning. And there's just all kinds of cool stuff that they're doing in there. But you see it flow over to the other retailers as well. So now everybody has bagel seasoning.
Right. But then you need the next thing, right? So it needs to be a continuous. So there needs to be, for any given retailer, a strategy, right? What is your strategy going to be? Is it going to be continuous? Are you built for continuous change and evolution and new flavors continuous? Or is it going to be more intentional, looking at the thing that's when it's big enough to become the mass thing is when I want it. So what is the strategy? There's all different ways of defining your strategy.
Well, and we have such a variety of retailers across the U.S. from the giant Walmarts, Targets, Publix of the world to little tiny Hy-Vees and things that their strategies won't all be the same.
Right.
They can't all be the same.
Right.
Honestly,
And that's the key to strategy. If they were all the same, then that's not a strategy anymore, is it? That's just
but it kind of gets us to that future conversation, right? Because private brand strategy has by and large been the same for a lot of retailers, right? It's here's my good, better, best. I might have a coffee brand and a baby brand or something, but if I laid that portfolio of things across each other and changed the logo,
But that's probably peaked at this point. Now you got to really kind of push it forward, think outside the box. How am I going to elevate and grow that and attract the shoppers that fit for my store? It's all going to go back to your shopper, your community. Am I hitting the target for what they need?
Well, I mean, I tell people all the time, they're like, well, know your customer. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. We always have known our customers, retailers. If it was in the Wild West and owned a little store and a new family moved in, because I only had 200 families, turns out if they're Jewish, I'm going to all of a sudden carry matzo ball stuff, right? It's just that at a higher level. And they kind of look at me like, oh, yeah. I think it's intriguing. So as we look at the future, I mean, what are your thoughts? What are the opportunities? What are the challenges? Obviously, there's no right answer or right or wrong answers here. And honestly, different retailers could do all of the answers, right?
Right. Well, I think the limited assortment value retailers will continue to expand. And when that happens, they're going to raise the tide for private brands in terms of demand and introduce more people to that value. On the other hand, some of the more conventional retailers will seek to disrupt that growth and seek to expand their private brand offering. When I look at that, I always wonder how much is too much.
Yeah.
But because where am I going to go for my depth of assortment now, right? And so we might be seeing more of these like specialty retailers, like the one in my community that people go to that have the depth of assortment, or the original Whole Foods. People went there, right. They didn't buy big baskets, but they went for the depth of assortment. So where is that going to occur? And many of those things are people like to shop for and discover. So having the endless aisle online, that's fine. But when I'm going to make something tonight, I'm going to go to the store and, be like, let's mix it up. And, I want to have more of that shopping experience and discovery. So where is that going to happen if if the retailers in the middle start leaning all the way into more store brands. So that's something I sort of ponder about. Like,
and I
how
think
is
the
the
opportunity
landscape
then
going to
becomes, what do
change?
store brands look like for you? If you want to go heavily into, you can, but it'll look more like a Trader Joe's strategy where the design's completely different because they want it to look like it's a discovery, right? It's a treasure
Right,
hunt. They're going after different flavors and international foods, and it can't look like, here's my fake Cheerios, right?
right.
So it could be done with private brands. It's going to take more work and more people and more research and more innovation and
More resources, right? Financial, right? So it really comes down to the different banners in the retailer, their communities, really understanding what's going to work and not work, right? It's not. I think we're at a time where things are evolving. Dollar stores are growing.
yeah.
I think more of the non-food is kind of going online. So it is about food, and food is life, right? It's experiential, and it's part of culture, the cooking, preparing the food, shopping for food. So how is that going to look moving forward?
Well, honestly, I kind of look at the grocery stores that you and I grew up with, not however many years ago. I
Like
stand
10
in them
years
and I'm
ago?
like,
No.
I don't know how many SKUs of spaghetti sauce you actually need in brands I've never heard of, even if they're national brands,
Mhm.
right? So it's give me the variety, give me the choice, give me something interesting, but help me understand what it is, not just give me 200 different brands I've never heard of.
Excellent point. Yeah.
So,
It has to be in the right place, right? Is spaghetti sauce, right, the right place to have that depth, or is it other places, right?
yeah, I always look at that category and go, holy cow, there's a lot of stuff in here. It's, and I think people still buy the same 3 or 4 SKUs. So you have the
Right.
numbers, you can figure that out. But
And that's the acceptable set, right? My family likes it. I'm not taking a risk. I'm not wasting my money on something they may not like.
yeah, so it's very exciting. So, I always wonder if you were starting a retailer today from scratch, right? What that would look like. And people ask me when particular retailers, they're like, what should we be afraid of? I'm like, it's the 2 ladies in Denver, Colorado who just decided to open their own store, and it doesn't look anything like your store. It doesn't have aisles. It doesn't have it's built to help them shop. And they kind of look at me like, oh crap.
No, you're right. You're right.
And
Exactly
they're
right.
like, is that possible? I said, well, remember 15 years ago, there wasn't really any Amazon.
Hmm. Yeah. Don't assume it's not going to change. I
So
think that's on the whole evolution of the whole retail landscape. That's coming. We just
well,
can't quite see it yet, right?
make it easier for me to live, honestly, to feed my family, to do whatever,
Mhm.
give me the products I want. Most people don't know who owns those brands anyway. So it could be you. That's fine. Um, I think it's an exciting opportunity. So, and we'll talk about a good bit of this stuff at the conference coming up. There's a lot of what could it be, what will it be conversations. So
Nice. Looking
that'll be
forward to it.
very exciting. So we always end up with the same 5 questions. Question number 1: what's your favorite word?
My latest favorite word is clarity. And the reason why is it's not divisive, right? You're not saying you're right or you're wrong. You're seeking to understand. So clarity indicates you're seeking to understand. And so I've been using that word a lot. So I like that one.
It seems very relevant in these trying times. So, are you a more artistic or a more mathematic person?
So, through the years, you do these different tests, and I come out like in the middle all the time. Like, so I'm kind of in the middle. Um, I want to be more artistic, but I'm not as artistic as I would like to be.
Fair enough. Number 3: if you could share a meal with anyone, past or present, living or dead, who would it be and why?
I'm just intrigued by Albert Einstein. He's just, um, and besides being brilliant, he was a humanitarian, but also the more he learned, the more spiritual he became. And I just think he would be kind of a fun person to have a kind of banter and have a conversation with, because I would try to be funny and he'd be funnier, I think. So
I grew up in Malden, South Carolina, which is actually where Bilo's headquarters used to be. It's not obviously not there anymore, but and believe it or not, that's just outside of Greenville, South Carolina. Einstein spent a good bit of time at Furman University in South Carolina. It was his family was there. So there's all these pictures of Einstein around Greenville that you'll see. It's just kind of weird. You're like, wait a minute, that's Albert Einstein.
Yeah, there he is again.
So I have that connection with him because of that.
I didn't know that, but okay.
Yeah, it's one of these. Nobody knows it, but it's one of those interesting things. Oh, let's see here. Number 4? What profession other than your own would you have liked to have attempted?
Well, recently I've been like, why didn't I become a landscape architect? Because I'm really, after remote living, working remote, I spent a lot of time like understanding like native plants and pollinators and planting in my yard. And I have an abundance of birds, like crazy amount of birds. And I'm like, oh, I'm fascinated by that. Just a few plants has made such a change, like in the yard. And now I'm like, I think I need to lean into that. And I'm like, why? Like, this is sort of creative, but it's got like science to it. I'm like, it sort of fits for me. Why didn't I do this?
Well, you can retire and do that for a living someday. Oh, let's see. And number 5, the future of sorry, that's not the question. Number 5, if you could speak to yourself when you began your career, what advice would you give yourself?
People would often give advice of, find a mentor. Sometimes the mentor finds you, right? But really what's more important is an advocate, right? Especially in the business world. So a mentor is great, but an advocate is better.
Absolutely. I mean, I worked at several large corporate headquarters, and the people who found those right advocates really did well, either because they said, hey, don't do that. Or they were in the meetings and said, hey, Maryellen's great.
Right. Or they steered you to the opportunities, like, oh, this is going to go right. They steer you into the opportunities. They make a path for you.
Well, that's great advice. Well, thank you, Maryellen. We look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Obviously, the conference is going to be exciting, and we'll be here in Charlotte, North Carolina on the 16th through the 18th. If you're actually traveling and you're going to Amsterdam for PLMA, we're also doing a Vertex Awards ceremony the 22nd. So that Monday, I'll hop on a plane just after the conference, and we'll go give out Vertex Awards over there. That event's completely free. So come have a drink with us at the DoubleTree next to the Central Station there. So thank you very much, Maryellen.
Thank you, Chris. Enjoyed it.